Moving to a new neighborhood, my wife reconnected with an old friend, and they had a three-way relationship I wouldn't have known if I hadn't accidentally adopted a parrot. I am Gregory. You could say I am a man who values peace and stability above all else. After years of hard work, Miranda, my wife, and I were finally able to buy our dream home, a charming abode nestled in a tranquil neighborhood, where we envisioned a new chapter of blissful contentment. We imagined evenings spent together in the backyard, watching the sun dip below the horizon after long days of labor. Life seemed poised for perfection. But fate, it would seem, had a mischievous plan in store. As soon as we moved in, Miranda ran into an old acquaintance, Clinton. He lived right next door, along with his wife, Orla. It all started so innocently, just the usual pleasantries exchanged with new neighbors. As I stepped out onto the patio, a sense of tranquility washed over me. We'd only moved in yesterday, and the quiet morning air in this neighborhood was truly delightful. A man stood near the gate of the house next door, and with a friendly smile, I approached him. "Good morning, Clinton. My wife and I just moved in yesterday. I'm Gregory. It's a pleasure to meet you," I said, feeling a sense of satisfaction at finally settling in. Clinton returned a relaxed smile, his eyes twinkling with warmth. He stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Gregory, it's Clinton. This is my wife, Orla." He gestured towards a woman standing nearby, who responded with a charming smile. "We're your next-door neighbors. It's wonderful to have new people in the neighborhood." Orla joined us, nodding and offering a welcoming smile. There was something about her that radiated warmth, yet she seemed slightly reserved. "It's a pleasure to meet you both. Miranda, right? You two seem very well suited," Orla said softly. Miranda, standing beside me, returned a smile. A glimmer of light danced in her eyes as she acknowledged Orla's compliment. "Yes, that's me." "Thank you, Orla. We really love the area. It feels so cozy." I surveyed the neighborhood, taking a deep breath. Something about it felt right, a perfect place to begin a new and more peaceful life. I turned back to Clinton and said, "It feels like we've finally found the right place to settle down. This neighborhood seems very quiet." Clinton nodded, his smile still in place, and he placed a hand on my shoulder again, this time with a gesture of shared understanding rather than a greeting. "It is. It's a fantastic place to live, especially for families. You'll love it here." The conversation continued with the usual pleasantries, and before long we all began to disperse. I was still happy about our new life, unaware that this chance encounter would be the catalyst for a storm I couldn't have foreseen. As Clinton and Orla turned and walked away, Miranda headed back inside. She tossed her hair back nonchalantly, seeming to dismiss our brief exchange, but a flicker of tension lingered in her eyes. I trailed behind her, feeling a pang of curiosity but not dwelling on it. While Miranda busied herself arranging things, tidying up the living room, I began to inquire about our new neighbor. "Clinton was an old friend, huh? You seem to be having a good time catching up." Miranda chuckled softly, her laughter tinged with a mixture of surprise and wry amusement. "An old friend, yes. But to be honest, I used to absolutely despise him. Back in school, Clinton and I were like oil and water. We constantly clashed, competing for everything, every little thing. We were like sworn enemies, back then." I leaned against the doorframe, watching her carefully place small decorative items on the bookshelf, unable to suppress a smile. "Really? That doesn't sound like you at all. How come I've never heard you mention him before?" Miranda shrugged, her hands moving deftly as she arranged things. "Old times. Not really worth mentioning. I didn't think he was worth remembering, but now we bump into each other, and he's our neighbor. Life is full of surprises, isn't it?" I chuckled, struggling to picture Miranda, my gentle and peaceful wife, engaged in a catfight with anyone. "Oil and water? Really? I can't imagine you hating one that much." Miranda turned, a bright smile illuminating her face, but her eyes sparkled as if she had just recalled a delightful memory. "Believe me, Clinton was one of the most infuriating people. He was arrogant, self-absorbed, always thinking he was better than everyone else. I hate to admit it, but maybe that's why we were always at each other's throats. We both wanted to prove we were the best." I stood there, listening to Miranda recount tales of Clinton from their past, feeling nothing out of the ordinary, nothing unusual. I stayed there, leaning against the doorframe, watching Miranda busy herself with rearranging the house. There was no denying her excellent taste. Everything she placed was perfectly positioned, but in my mind the story of Clinton kept circling. A flicker of curiosity ignited within me. I couldn't understand why the past between Miranda and Clinton occupied my thoughts so much. "And now, he lives right next door," I said, trying to keep my voice even, but I could feel a slight unease creeping into my heart. "Do you think things will be peaceful this time, or will it be oil and water all over again?" Miranda turned, a soft smile gracing her lips, her eyes sparkling mischievously. "I doubt it. We've both grown up, haven't we? You see, Clinton's married now, and Orla seems like a very kind and decent woman." She placed a hand on her hip, looking at me with a playful smirk. I think he's probably mellowed out a bit, or at least I'm mature enough now to ignore childish games. I smiled at her confidence, but I still couldn't shake the thoughts about Clinton. When I first met him, I didn't see anything extraordinary, just a friendly, ordinary neighbor like any other. But listening to Miranda talk about him, it seemed she held strong feelings, whether it was hatred or aversion, that I couldn't simply ignore. Strange, I thought to myself. It's probably just the past. I hope so. I wouldn't want to be playing referee every time we visit the neighbors, I joked, trying to lighten the mood, but a sense of discomfort lingered deep within me. Miranda laughed, stepping closer to me, placing a hand on my chest, her eyes full of affection. Darling, don't worry. The past is the past. Clinton means nothing special to me, just an old friend we happened to run into. Everything is fine, she spoke softly, as if reassuring me, but her words only stirred up more confusion. I took her hand, squeezing it gently, offering a smile and trying to dismiss the doubts that clouded my mind. I trust you, I said, silently hoping that I had nothing to worry about. But in that brief moment, between the depths of Miranda's eyes and the words she spoke, something felt amiss. A strange sensation washed over me, as if a piece of the puzzle was missing, a piece I hadn't yet found. After a long day of unpacking and settling in, Miranda and I finally sat down together for our first dinner in our new home. The evening air was warm and inviting, with soft golden light emanating from the chandelier above. The aroma of grilled meat and red wine filled the air, erasing the anxieties of the day. Miranda always had a way of creating a sense of ease. She smiled softly, raising her glass towards me. To us, finally settling into our dream home. I clinked my glass against hers, a smile spreading across my face. Cheers. I think we'll make some wonderful memories here. We talked about the future, plans for the house, and the evenings we would spend relaxing together. Everything seemed perfect, just like the picture we had painted in our minds when we envisioned life here. I looked at Miranda, and in the warm glow of our new kitchen, she was still the woman I loved. The following morning, after a quick breakfast, we decided to greet a few more neighbors. Even though we had already met Clinton and Orla, I thought it would be good to establish relationships with others in the neighborhood. Miranda readily agreed, her enthusiasm bubbling over. What do you think about stopping by a few more houses? It never hurts to make a good impression from the start. We strolled down the street together, knocking on doors, meeting friendly families. Everyone was kind and hospitable. They complimented our new home, inquired about our life before, and eagerly shared interesting tidbits about the neighborhood. I felt a sense of reassurance knowing that this was truly an ideal place to build a new life. Miranda, fully back in her usual cheerful self, engaged with everyone, offering a charming smile, seemingly leaving behind any tension or anxiety from the previous day. She seamlessly blended into conversations with our new neighbors, and I couldn't deny that she always knew how to win people over. Life here, at least so far, seemed to be off to a smooth start. After greeting our new neighbors, Miranda and I headed back home. The sun was a bit harsh now, but the air was still fresh, and we both felt pleased with our morning of friendly socializing. But as soon as we stepped through the gate, we stopped in our tracks. In front of us, in the middle of our freshly manicured lawn, was a small, fluffy white dog busily relieving himself on the lush green grass we had painstakingly tended to yesterday. Miranda exclaimed, half amused and half flustered, "Oh my goodness, how cute." I couldn't help but smile at the dog's chubby, adorable appearance. But then we both quickly realized what he was doing. Miranda grimaced slightly, while I reached out to call him over. "But he's going potty on our grass." Before we could figure out what to do, Clinton appeared from the other side of the fence, running breathlessly toward us. "Gregory, Miranda, I am so sorry." He bent down, gently patting the head of the mischievous little pup. "This is Maxie, my dog. He's a bit of a handful, always running around." I looked at Clinton, then at the dog, unable to suppress a chuckle at this adorable, chaotic scene. "It's all right, Clinton, but our grass isn't fully grown yet, and Maxie's already baptized it." Miranda also laughed, then turned to Clinton. "Maxie is adorable, but he needs to learn his boundaries, don't you think?" Clinton stood up, leading Maxie with a small leash, a sheepish smile on his face. "I'll make sure he's better behaved next time, but to make amends, let me help you with something." Before I could understand what he intended to do, Clinton walked towards his own yard, returning with a handheld sprinkler. Without a word, he connected the hose from his yard to ours and began to spray, watering the grass where Maxie had gone. "I have to take responsibility for his actions," Clinton said with a laugh, focusing on watering our lawn. "At least this will help you get your grass back on track." I watched him water our yard, a slight sense of surprise at his eagerness. Miranda stood beside me, arms crossed, a smile playing on her lips as she watched Clinton. "You are a good neighbor, Clinton." "Thank you." Clinton nodded, his eyes still glued to the stream of water. "No problem. I'll make sure Maxie doesn't bother you again." Miranda and I stood there, watching Clinton diligently watering our lawn. A peculiar sensation arose within me, a sense of comfort about our friendly neighbor, mixed with a slight unease about Clinton's sudden appearance. After finishing watering our lawn, Clinton stood up straight, turned off the sprinkler, and smiled at us. He gave a slight nod, a hint of apology mixed with his usual warmth. "Thanks for your understanding. I'll try to keep Maxie under control next time. He's probably just excited to have new friends." Miranda smiled, waving goodbye. "It's okay, Clinton. Maxie is so cute. We're very happy to have such friendly neighbors as you and Orla." I nodded, feeling a sense of ease settling in after this unexpected incident. "Thanks for helping with the lawn. See you later." Clinton nodded, waving back, then led Maxie back to his house. As we watched his retreating figure disappear behind the gate, Miranda and I lingered on our lawn, soaking in the warm sunlight and breathing in the fresh air of our new neighborhood. Miranda suddenly turned to me, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Don't you think Maxie is adorable? He's so tiny and playful, but he's also very sweet." I smiled, nodding. "Yeah, I have to admit he is cute. Anyway, it's not a big deal about him going potty. The grass will grow back." Miranda suddenly stared intently at me, as if deep in thought. "What do you think about getting a dog? We have a big yard, and it's a quiet neighborhood. I've never thought about it before, but after seeing Maxie, I think a little pup would make our house even more lively." I was a bit taken aback by her suggestion. We hadn't really considered getting a pet before, but seeing the excited look in Miranda's eyes, I could tell she was serious. "You think so?" I asked, a bit hesitant, but starting to envision a small dog running around our yard. I've never owned a dog, but maybe it would be fun. A new family member. Miranda beamed, her excitement evident. "I think so. We can play with him, walk him around the neighborhood. Don't you think Maxie is so cute and energetic? A little pup would make our home so much more lively." I looked at her, then surveyed our new house. The idea was starting to sound appealing. A new life here, with a small dog running around our lawn, seemed like a cheerful and warm prospect. "Maybe you're right," I replied, a smile forming on my lips. "We can consider it. But I hope he's not as energetic as Maxie." Miranda laughed out loud, her eyes bright. "Well, then we'll have to get a really well-behaved one. Deal." I nodded, feeling a surge of enthusiasm for this newfound idea. "Okay, we'll look into it. Maybe getting a dog is a great thing for our new life." We both laughed, and the idea of getting a small dog lingered in my mind, making me wonder if a life filled with even more positive changes awaited us. That afternoon, after a light lunch, Miranda and I decided to visit a nearby pet store to explore the possibility of getting a dog. The idea of a little pup running around our yard, adding to the joy and laughter in our new life, was growing more and more appealing. As we stepped into the store, we were instantly enveloped in the world of puppies of every breed and color. Each one had sparkling eyes and wagging tails that seemed to greet us with excitement. Miranda couldn't hide her delight, crouching down to pet a fluffy puppy. "Look at this one. Isn't he adorable? He seems so well behaved." I nodded, but before I could respond, something in the corner of the store caught my eye. There was a row of smaller cages, not for dogs or cats. From a distance, I could see a parrot with vibrant plumage perched on a wooden branch inside a cage. We hadn't planned to pay any attention to it, but then, the parrot suddenly opened its beak and started speaking, its voice echoing through the store. "Pretty, pretty." Miranda and I both startled, disbelieving our ears. The parrot had just spoken, and it was clearly trying to flatter. Miranda covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes sparkling. "Did you hear that? It just called me pretty." I chuckled, moving closer to the parrot's cage. Its feathers were a dazzling mix of blues, yellows, and reds, and its eyes held the gaze of a professional flatterer. It stared at us, tilting its head, then repeated, "Pretty, pretty." Miranda stood beside me, her hand still gently stroking the puppy's fur. But her focus had shifted entirely to this unique parrot. She looked at me, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "What do you think about changing directions? This parrot, maybe he's more interesting than a dog." I looked at the parrot, still repeating the word pretty incessantly, and I suddenly thought that getting a parrot might be a unique and exciting idea. "He's definitely a charmer, I have to admit. Maybe getting a parrot would be more fun than we thought." Miranda beamed. "Why not try it? I love how he knows how to win people over. We'll have a talking friend." It didn't take long for us to make a decision. We approached the store employee and inquired about the parrot. It turned out he had been trained to speak a few basic phrases, but it was clear that he knew how to use them very cleverly. "We'll take the parrot," Miranda stated firmly, her eyes alight with delight. "What should we name him?" I asked, watching the parrot still perched on his branch, his head tilting as if listening to the conversation. Miranda didn't hesitate. "Libby, it sounds so fun, and it suits his playful personality." After our choice was made, we didn't forget to buy a large cage, small toys, and food for Libby. The store employee even gave us instructions on how to care for him and how to teach him a few more phrases. As Libby was placed in a temporary cage, he immediately opened his beak, squawking, "Pretty, pretty." Miranda and I couldn't help but laugh, realizing that this parrot would be a more engaging friend than anything we could have expected from a puppy. So the plan to get a dog took an unexpected turn, I said, winking at Miranda, "But Libby will surely bring a lot of fun." Miranda nodded, her hand gently brushing against Libby's cage. "I think we've just made a great decision." After choosing Libby, we headed towards the checkout counter. Miranda and I stopped in the bird supplies section to gather everything we needed for our new feathered friend. The excitement made us feel as if we were preparing to welcome a baby. Miranda looked around, holding a large cage with a sturdy perch and ample space for Libby, she said to me, her eyes filled with determination. "We need a big enough cage so Libby can spread his wings comfortably, don't you think?" I nodded, looking at the cage she had chosen and realizing it was perfect. "Yes, this is a good one. We should pick up some more toys. Libby will definitely need something to keep him entertained when we're not home." Miranda quickly selected a few bright, colorful toys, a small mirror, a bell that made a pleasant chime, and a few small wooden branches for Libby to climb on. They all went into the shopping cart. She picked up a bag of specialized parrot food and a few types of nuts for treats. "Is this food all right?" I asked, looking at the bag of food with a picture of a vibrant parrot on the packaging. "Yes," the store employee said, "this is the main food for parrots. But we should also get some nuts for treats when we're teaching him to speak," Miranda explained, carefully selecting a bag of sunflower seeds. We thoroughly checked everything, the cage, food, toys, and a small water bottle that attached to the cage for Libby. Once we were sure we hadn't missed anything, we headed to the checkout counter. "Looks like you're all set," the store employee smiled, seeing our haul, glancing down at Libby in his temporary cage. "Libby will be very happy with these things. He's a very clever parrot." Libby, sensing the attention directed at him, opened his beak and squawked his familiar phrase, "Pretty, pretty." Miranda and I burst into laughter. The employee couldn't suppress a smile either. After paying, we carefully placed the large cage with Libby inside into the car, along with the bags full of necessities. On the drive home, Miranda tilted her head, glancing at Libby through the rearview mirror. Then beaming, "I think we made a wonderful choice. Libby will make life at home so much more exciting." I looked at her, unable to hide my own smile. I never thought a trip to buy a dog would end with a talking, charming parrot like this. But maybe, this is the most exciting surprise of the day. Libby chirped from the back seat, this time a soft, happy sound, as if agreeing with us. We both laughed, and I couldn't wait to see what fun Libby would bring to our new life. Upon arriving home, I pulled into the driveway, and we both felt a surge of excitement as we were about to introduce Libby to his new space. Miranda opened the car door and carefully lifted the large cage containing Libby out, while I grabbed the necessary bags. We stepped inside together, smiling every time we heard Libby squawking from the cage. "Pretty, pretty," Libby repeated, as if unable to resist showcasing his flattering skills. After clearing a corner of the living room, Miranda and I decided to place Libby's cage on a stand near the large window. The natural light from the window would illuminate the space, making it bright and comfortable. We thought it would be the perfect spot for Libby, with a view of the garden and the gentle sunlight during the day. "I think he'll love it here," I said, pulling back the curtains to let the light flood into the room. Miranda nodded, carefully opening the cage door, allowing Libby to fly freely if he wished. As soon as the door was open, Libby quickly flapped his wings and soared around the room. His vibrant plumage shimmered under the sunlight, filling the room with color. Miranda giggled, watching Libby with delight. "Look at him. Libby seems to really like his new space." Libby circled the living room, then returned to perch on the wooden branch inside his cage. He chirped happily, repeating his familiar phrase, "Pretty, pretty." I couldn't suppress a smile watching Libby soar, thinking about how our life would become more lively with the presence of a talking parrot. "I think we just brought home a professional flatterer," I said, glancing at Miranda with a smile on my face. She laughed, her hand gently brushing against my arm. "That's true, but I actually like it. He'll make our home so much more vibrant." Libby continued to fly around for a few more circles before landing back on the stand near the window. The afternoon sun bathed his feathers, making the blues, reds, and yellows even more vibrant. He looked at us with bright eyes, tilting his head, then chirped again, "Pretty, pretty." We both laughed out loud, realizing that from now on, Libby's cheerful squawks and flattery would be an inseparable part of our new home. That evening, after Libby had settled into his cage near the window, Miranda and I sat down on the sofa, relaxing after a long day filled with joy and unexpected events. Libby's chirps echoed through the quiet of the house, blending with the soft glow from the ceiling lights. The atmosphere was cozy, and it made me believe that our new life was heading in the right direction. A week passed quickly, and everything seemed to have become more familiar. Libby, who had initially only repeated simple phrases like pretty, had now become an indispensable part of the house. He still flew around the living room every morning, chirping as he watched the sunlight stream through the window, filling the home with a sense of life. Miranda and I began to feel a deeper connection to our new home. We spent evenings together, savoring delicious meals, listening to Libby chirp in the background. Our life in the new neighborhood had also become more familiar as we became closer to our neighbors. Miranda and Orla, Clinton's wife, quickly became close. They met frequently, sharing baking secrets or going shopping together. I could see that Miranda was genuinely happy to have a close friend, and I would sometimes hear their laughter echoing from Orla's house as they excitedly discussed fashion or new recipes. As for me, I occasionally encountered Clinton in our yards, sharing conversations about everyday matters from gardening to work, then exchanging experiences about living in the neighborhood. Our neighborly relationship was growing stronger. This new life was truly starting to fall into place, warm and connected. Our new home was no longer just a place to live, but a space brimming with laughter, shared moments, and valuable relationships that we hadn't anticipated when we first moved in. And through it all, Libby, with his cheerful chirps, had become a symbol of our new and vibrant beginnings. That afternoon, I returned home earlier than usual. Work was slow, and I thought it would be wonderful to have some free time with my family. As I opened the door, the quiet of the house felt comforting, but the first thing that caught my eye was Libby, perched on the wooden branch near the window. As always, Libby greeted me with his familiar phrases, but this time his voice sounded unusual, accompanied by a phrase one had never heard before. "Hush, hush," Libby can hear the parrot's voice echoed, clear and distinct. I froze in the doorway, my body suddenly stiff. My heart began to race, and in that moment everything seemed to pause. "Hush, hush," Libby can hear the parrot repeated, without hesitation, as if this phrase was something he had heard many times. I glanced at Miranda, who had also turned from the bed, clearly having heard it. She looked at me, her eyes a mixture of confusion and bewilderment. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice slightly shaky. Miranda sat up, her brow furrowed in surprise. I don't know where Libby learned that." The feeling of unease returned, stronger than ever. Libby's phrase was no longer just a random or meaningless utterance. It was specific and meaningful, and it was impossible for me to ignore. I quickly stepped out of the bedroom towards the living room, where Libby was perched on his cage near the window. He looked at me, tilting his head as usual, but this time, his eyes seemed to hold a mischievous glint that I hadn't noticed before. "Libby," I whispered, as if talking to him directly, "where did you learn that?" Libby chirped softly, then fell silent, saying nothing more. I stood there, my mind overflowing with unanswered questions, trying to piece together the scattered clues. "Hush, hush," Libby can hear why this phrase. What had Libby heard? And more importantly, who had said it for him to imitate? That evening, after hearing Libby repeat "hush, hush," Libby can hear, I tried to ask the parrot many times, but no matter how patient I was, Libby wouldn't respond. He just tilted his head, looked at me with bright eyes, then abruptly flapped his wings and flew back to his cage, as if nothing had happened. The house returned to its quiet state. I stood there, in the empty living room, my mind filled with chaotic thoughts. The parrot's strange phrase, the incident with the washing machine, and the nagging unease I couldn't shake. It was as if they were forming a picture, but the pieces were still too scattered for me to grasp the whole image. I returned to the bedroom, lay down beside Miranda, but the heavy feeling in my heart wouldn't let me rest. I tossed and turned all night, bombarded by unanswered questions, but no satisfying answers came. The next morning, as I arrived at work, I couldn't shake those thoughts. During my lunch break, I decided to talk to John, a longtime colleague. He was someone with a clear head who often kept parrots at home, so I thought he might understand the situation better than I did. "I need to ask you something," I said, sitting down beside John at a small cafe near the office. "My parrot, he's been saying some really strange things lately, and I don't know where he learned them. Like yesterday he said, 'Hush, hush, Libby can hear. What do you think about this?'" John looked at me for a moment, then took a sip of coffee before replying, his voice thoughtful. "To be honest, parrots often learn and repeat phrases they hear around them, and most of the time they imitate phrases that those closest to them say." I froze, a wave of chills running down my spine. Closest to him? But Libby is mostly at home with me and my wife, Miranda. Could it be? John raised an eyebrow, his eyes widening as if he had just discovered something. Exactly. If he's saying things like that, it's likely he heard them from someone in the house. It could be during a conversation you didn't notice, or during a conversation where only he was there to hear it. My heart pounded in my chest. John's words rang in my mind like a wake-up call. If Libby was merely imitating what he heard at home, then who was saying those phrases? Miranda? Who else could be talking in our house besides my wife and me? I sat in silence for a moment, then the seeds of doubt began to sprout in my mind, taking root in every thought. The picture I had been unable to assemble was starting to come together. I recalled the washing machine incident, Miranda and Clinton in the laundry room, her mentioning the problem and asking Clinton to fix it because he used to be a repairman. At the time, I hadn't paid much attention. But now, combined with Libby's two strange phrases, hush, hush, Libby can hear, and kids playing outside, a sudden wave of anxiety washed over me. Something was off. Something was wrong with what I had believed was a peaceful marriage. That evening, after returning home, I could no longer pretend that nothing was amiss. After dinner, when just my wife and I were left in the living room, I decided to confront Miranda. I felt heavy, but there was no other way. Miranda, I began, my voice deep and serious, my gaze fixed on her. I need to talk to you about Libby. She turned, looking surprised, but she maintained her composure. Libby. What's he saying now? I took a deep breath, my face hardening. You know, Libby's been saying some very strange things lately. Yesterday, he said, hush, hush, Libby can hear, and before that, kids playing outside. Do you know where he learned that? Miranda seemed flustered, her eyes flickering. I don't know, maybe he just picked it up somewhere. I met her eyes, unable to suppress my doubts any longer. Are you sure you don't know? He could only have heard it from you or me, or maybe from someone else in the house when I'm not here. Miranda remained silent, her eyes shifting, looking at the floor. The air between us thickened. I knew she was hiding something. Having no patience left, I moved closer, my voice growing more serious. Tell me, Miranda. The washing machine incident, and Libby's phrases. What is it that you haven't told me about you and Clinton? She still didn't say anything, but the silence itself was an answer. I could see her struggling inside, trying to conceal a secret she knew she couldn't hide forever. Then, Miranda looked up at me, her eyes full of regret and confusion. Gregory, she said, her voice trembling, you have to promise to listen to me. I didn't say anything, simply standing there, waiting. Miranda took a deep breath, then finally confessed, her voice filled with shame and embarrassment. I was playing a game with Orla lately. We've been trying out the idea of swapping husbands just to experience something new. Clinton was in on it too, but it was just a game, nothing more. Her words felt like a dagger thrust into my heart. Everything around me seemed to crumble, and the answer finally became clearer than ever. Miranda knelt before me, her eyes welling up with tears, regret etched on her face. She took my hand, her shoulders shaking as if she couldn't hold her composure any longer. The scene before me weighed heavily on my heart, but all I felt was emptiness. Gregory, please forgive me, she pleaded, her voice choked with emotion. It was all a misunderstanding. A stupid game. I swear we never went too far. It was just curiosity, just a game. Miranda's words seemed to vanish into the vast emptiness in my mind. I heard her, I felt her pain, but I couldn't respond. My mind was reeling with images, blurry events now strung together to reveal a harsh truth. The feeling of betrayal was overwhelming, rendering her words meaningless. Miranda cried, her hand gripping mine, begging for a glimmer of forgiveness, but my silence frightened her. Suddenly she stood up, wiping the tears from her face, her eyes changing. She walked towards the small table in the living room, where a pair of scissors lay. You have to listen to me, she suddenly exclaimed, her voice trembling but resolute, her hand gripping the scissors. If you don't forgive me, if you don't believe me, then there's nothing left. I can't lose you, Gregory. You have to understand that I didn't mean to hurt you. I looked at Miranda, my heart pounding in my chest as I saw her holding the scissors, her eyes filled with turmoil. There was fear that flared within me, but also compassion as I saw her distress. I knew she wasn't threatening me in a dangerous way, but this situation had gone too far. I sighed, feeling the pressure in my head building, threatening to explode. Finally, after agonizing moments of silence, I spoke, my voice deep and heavy. Miranda, put the scissors down. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears and panic. But when she saw the resoluteness in my eyes, she slowly lowered the scissors to the table, releasing her grip. I continued, my voice weary and full of heaviness. I don't know what to do right now. This is too much for me. I need time to think. Don't pressure me to make a decision now. Miranda looked at me, her face etched with regret and fear, but also a glimmer of hope that I wasn't abandoning her. I turned away, unable to face the despair in her eyes. I needed space, time to process everything that had happened. There was nothing left to say. I left the living room, walking slowly upstairs to our bedroom, my heart burdened by questions and pain. Silence enveloped the house, leaving me alone with my chaotic, unsolvable thoughts. I lay on the bed, turning my back on Miranda, saying nothing. After leaving the living room, I didn't know how to face her. Miranda's confessions felt like a hammer blow to my heart, leaving me gasping for air. My mind was filled with jumbled images and thoughts, but there was no escape. Miranda followed into the room, trying to approach, but I didn't turn to look at her. Every word she spoke now felt hollow to me. I stayed awake all night, unable to sleep. My mind was a whirlpool of unanswered questions. The feeling of betrayal and confusion drowned me, but I didn't know what to do. In the darkness and silence, I could only lie there, trying to suppress the anger that was building inside me. As the first rays of morning light peeked through the curtains, I turned to face Miranda. The dark circles beneath my eyes made her fall silent. I didn't want to live in this uncertainty any longer. "Give me your phone," I said, my voice cold. "I want to see what you two have been exchanging." Miranda looked up, her eyes momentarily hesitant. She stared at me silently, but didn't immediately hand over her phone. The silence made the anger inside me erupt. "If you hesitate any longer, there won't be any chance left," I snapped, my voice sharp and laced with warning. I felt as if I had reached my limit, and there was no turning back. Miranda lowered her head, her hand trembling, and finally reached for the phone beside her. She handed it to me without a word, her face filled with worry and fear. I took the phone from her, unlocked it, and went straight to the Skype app, where I suspected the conversation had taken place. In the list of conversations, I saw a group chat with 3 people: Miranda, Orla, and Clinton. Scrolling through the initial messages, everything seemed fairly ordinary small talk, exchanges about house repairs, and some harmless banter. But as I scrolled down, the messages started to change. They became more intimate, more suggestive, and then things I couldn't imagine appeared before my eyes. Explicit pictures. They shared not just words, but intimate photos with each other, crossing every boundary that a friendship or neighborly relationship should have. I held the phone, my eyes widening, my heart pounding in my chest as each image and message flashed before me. I couldn't believe that the wife I trusted had been involved in such a twisted game. But the worst was yet to come. In the chat, Miranda even complained and talked about our intimate life. She mentioned things she wasn't happy with, desires that weren't fulfilled. Then, like a final blow, I saw Orla suggesting the idea of borrowing husbands with Miranda. They talked about trying out new sensations, and Miranda agreed. Not only out of curiosity, but because of their closeness, she called Orla her best friend. They reassured each other that it was fine, just an experiment. But the truth was that it had gone too far. It had crossed the line of a joke. It had deeply violated my trust and love. I set the phone down, my heart filled with disgust and pain. Everything I had thought was good in our marriage now felt like a gaping wound, one that couldn't be healed. Miranda looked at me, her eyes full of regret and fear. She knew I had seen everything. There was nothing left to hide. "Gregory," she began, her voice trembling, as if she wanted to explain further, but no words could soothe the anger burning inside me now. I stood there, looking at her but not saying a word. My silence made her panic even more, but I had no strength left to face her at that moment. All day, I was in a state of emotional paralysis. My mind was empty, unable to focus on anything. Everything around me seemed to fade, and I barely felt time passing. Miranda, on the other hand, was constantly crying, trying to explain, begging for forgiveness. She kept repeating that it was all a terrible mistake, that she didn't know it would go so far. But I couldn't respond. Her words now were just hollow sounds in my ears. The whole day passed like a nightmare. I was apathetic, unsure of what to do or even how to feel. The feeling of betrayal was too great, and the pain seemed to numb all my thoughts. Every time I looked at Miranda, seeing her swollen red eyes and her remorseful face, I only felt more distant. Meanwhile, Orla and Clinton seemed to have realized that their secret was out. I don't know if Miranda called them or if they felt it from the tension in the messages, but they acted quickly. I saw from the window Orla and Clinton hurriedly packing things into their car, preparing for a trip. They looked as if they wanted to avoid us, leaving Miranda to deal with the mess they had created. Clinton, who had once been our friendly neighbor, was now a mere shadow, avoiding me. And Orla, whom Miranda had called her best friend, said nothing to us before leaving. I stood there, silently watching them drive away without a word. A part of me wanted to confront them, to yell and release all the anger and pain building inside me, but I was too tired. There was nothing left to say. Evening came quickly, and I still couldn't escape the darkness in my heart. Miranda had tried to reach out to me all day, time and time again, but I remained silent. I knew she regretted it, but it didn't change the truth of what had happened. Whenever I closed my eyes, the images from the Skype conversation flooded my mind, the complaints, the explicit pictures, and especially the idea of borrowing husbands that Miranda had agreed to. It wasn't just curiosity or a joke anymore. It had gone far beyond the boundaries of what I could accept. Finally, after a long struggle with myself, I sat down at the desk, opened my laptop, and started to write a divorce petition. My feelings at that moment were a mixture of pain and emptiness. Divorce wasn't what I had wanted when we moved into our dream home. I had thought this would be the start of a new life full of happiness, but now everything had fallen apart. As I printed out the petition, Miranda walked into the room. She saw the paper on the desk, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Gregory, please. Don't do this. I know I was wrong, but don't leave me," she sobbed, her voice cracking. I couldn't turn away any longer. I had to face her, with all the hurt and disappointment I had endured. "I don't know what else to do, Miranda," I said, my voice low and weary. I tried. I tried to understand, to forgive. But it's not just a small mistake. It's not just a game. Miranda cried, tears streaming down her face. "I swear, Gregory, we didn't do anything. It was just a stupid idea." But it never went further. I shook my head, the pain rising in my heart. "No, Miranda. It went too far from the moment you decided to participate in this. Not just because of the pictures, the messages, but because you betrayed my trust, betrayed our marriage." She collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, but I couldn't do anything more. I was too exhausted, and my heart felt as if it had shattered. "I'm going to file," I said, making the final decision. "We both need to face reality. This marriage, it's not what it used to be anymore." I stood up, looked at Miranda one last time, and walked out of the room. Her sobs echoed through the house, which now felt foreign. Libby, the normally cheerful parrot, was silent in his cage, as if he understood the tense atmosphere in the house. I stepped outside, stood on the lawn, and took a deep breath under the quiet night sky. It felt as if a massive weight had been lifted, but the pain was still there, heavy in my heart. I stood silently under the night sky, the pale moonlight casting a faint glow on the front yard of the house that once held so much hope. Everything around me seemed peaceful, but inside me raged a relentless storm. The happy memories of Miranda and me faded in an instant, overshadowed by the betrayal and pain I never expected. I looked up at our house, where not long ago Miranda and I dreamed of a new life, with quiet evenings and echoing laughter. Now it felt empty, a hollow shell of shattered dreams. Miranda's sobs from inside the house still echoed in the night, but they were distant sounds now. A gap had formed between us, too vast to bridge. The divorce papers lay on the table, ready to be filed. I had made the decision, and though it hurt, I knew it was the only way to set us both free. The divorce wouldn't be easy, but continuing to live in this lie would be worse. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. My life would be different from now on. I would have to learn to live without Miranda, without our shared dreams, but from this point, I would find myself again, rediscover the peace I had lost. The front door creaked open, and Miranda emerged, her eyes still red from crying. She stood silently on the porch, looking at me, but said nothing. We both knew there were no words to change what had happened. I didn't turn to look at her again, but I could feel the weight in her gaze. "Gregory," she whispered, her voice weak and desperate. I didn't answer. It was time for me to move on, to leave behind what had once been everything. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. The truth had shattered everything we had. I turned and walked down the small road in front of the house, my feet light but my heart heavy. The yellow streetlights cast a glow, illuminating the silent street. With each step, I felt the distance between me and my past widening, leaving behind the days gone by, the pain and the love that had once existed. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. From this moment, I would have to start again, however difficult, however painful it might be. And in that emptiness, I found a sliver of peace in accepting that a door had closed, but another one would open. Months passed since that night, the night everything fell apart. I filed the divorce papers the next day. It was a painful, drawn-out process, but ultimately it was necessary. Miranda tried to reach out, wanting to reconcile, but I couldn't go back. Too much had been damaged, and I needed to move on. The betrayal lingered too deep in my heart for me to pretend we could fix things. I moved out of the house shortly after, finding a small apartment in the city. It wasn't anything special, just a one-bedroom place with a view of the streets below, but it felt like a fresh start. Waking up alone in silence was strange at first, and the emptiness of the apartment haunted me. There were no sounds of Miranda, no constant chatter from Libby, but, over time, I began to settle into this new life. That silence, which once felt suffocating, slowly became my refuge. I poured myself into work. Every project that came my way, I took on. I stayed late at the office, driven by a need to stay busy. The distraction was welcome, pulling me away from my thoughts and giving me something concrete to focus on. My colleagues noticed the shift in me. They could see I was more determined, more focused, and as I threw myself into work, something unexpected happened. Success followed. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my career had taken off in ways I hadn't anticipated. The long hours, the focus, and the drive to succeed had paid off. I was promoted to a senior role at the company, overseeing major projects that once seemed out of reach. Clients started seeking me out for my expertise, and with that came recognition from management. What had started as a way to escape my personal turmoil became something much larger. I wasn't just staying late at the office anymore to avoid going home. I was staying late because I was building something. My name carried weight in the industry now, and opportunities were lining up at my door. There were invitations to speak at conferences, offers to lead larger teams, and even discussions about branching out into my own consultancy firm. I had never considered starting my own business before, but the idea to grow. My contacts were solid, the market was ripe, and I knew I had the experience to make it work. So, after months of planning, I took the leap. I resigned from my position and launched my own consulting firm. The move was risky, but I felt ready for the challenge. Within months, the firm was thriving. I secured a few key contracts early on, and word of mouth spread quickly. My reputation for delivering high-quality work brought in more clients than I had expected. I hired a small team, rented a sleek office space downtown, and before long, the business was booming. It wasn't long before we expanded, taking on larger contracts and establishing a presence in multiple cities. 1 year after starting the firm, I could hardly believe how far things had come. I had gone from feeling lost and broken to running a successful business that exceeded all of my expectations. My days were packed with meetings, presentations, and negotiations, but I thrived in that environment. The work was challenging, but the satisfaction of building something from the ground up made it all worthwhile. Financially, I was in a position I'd never imagined. The firm was turning a significant profit, and with it came new possibilities: investments, property, and even philanthropic work. I began donating to causes I believed in, supporting startups, and mentoring younger professionals who were just entering the industry. It felt good to give back, to be a part of something bigger than myself. My personal life, though quieter, found its own rhythm. I spent my weekends visiting art galleries or reading books I had long neglected. Painting remained a hobby I held on to, a creative outlet amidst the chaos of running a business. I had a small studio set up in my apartment where I would retreat after long days at work, letting the brushstrokes calm my mind. Occasionally, thoughts of Miranda crossed my mind, but they didn't linger. The pain of the past had faded, replaced by the satisfaction of where I was now. I didn't hate her, I just no longer cared. She had become a chapter of my life that was now closed, a memory that no longer held any power over me. I had built a new life, one that was focused on success, growth, and fulfillment. Every day brought new challenges, but I faced them with confidence, knowing that I had come through the worst and emerged stronger. As I stood in my office one evening, looking out over the city from my corner window, I realized just how far I had come. The man who had once felt lost in his own home now stood on solid ground, with a future brighter than he ever imagined. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. The journey from heartbreak to this point had been long, but it had made me who I am, and for the first time in a long time I was excited about what lay ahead.